Welcome to Musing on the Bard. I'm your host, Sally McLean. On today's episode, we welcome the wonderful LA-based actor Miguel Perez. Miguel has worked in films with the likes of Johnny Depp, Clint Eastwood, Steven Spielberg, Harrison Ford, Hilary Swank, and many others. His film and TV credits include Million Dollar Baby, Ocean's 11, Clear and Present Danger, Magnolia, Artificial Intelligence AI, Monsters, The Rookie, The Resident, SEAL Team, Designated Survivor, Fear the Walking Dead, Elementary, Bones, Madam Secretary, Murder in the First, Desperate Housewives, Cold Case, 24, The Shield, ER, Seinfeld, The Good Wife, NCIS LA, Star Trek Voyager, The Wonder Years, and CSI, to name a few. Onstage, he has worked in over 50 Broadway, off-Broadway and regional theatre productions with many theatre luminaries, including Mark Rylance, Margaret Whitton, George Wolfe, Sir Patrick Stewart, Kevin Kline, and many, many more, in productions such as The Tempest, Romeo and Juliet, Cyrano De Bergerac, Hedda Gabler, Henry VIII, Merry Wives of Windsor, and Antigone, and has been a regular fixture at the annual New York Shakespeare Festival. Also a teacher, voice artist, director, and writer, Miguel continues to work as an actor in theatre, film, and TV, most recently seen on stage as Padre Lorenzo in Romeo y Juliet, a Spanish-language version of Romeo and Juliet. Please forgive my pronunciation. Shakespeare Republic audiences will remember Miguel from his poignant, award-winning work as the chorus from Henry V in Shakespeare Republic, All the Webs Are Stage, The Lockdown Chronicles, a performance that won him Best Actor at the 2021 Montreal Digital Web Fest in Canada and a special mention for Best Actor at the 2021 New Zealand Web Fest, as well as being awarded alongside the rest of our amazing cast for that season with Best Ensemble Cast, Drama, at the 2021 British Web Awards, Best Ensemble, International Narrative, at the 2021 New Zealand Web Fest, Best Ensemble Performance at the 2022 London Web Fest in the UK, and nominated for Best Ensemble Performance, Drama, at the 2022 International Academy of Web Television Awards in the USA. So get comfortable and settle in as we embark on this fascinating conversation about Shakespeare, acting, and more with today's guest, Miguel Perez.
More than anything, playing Shakespeare, working on Shakespeare, swimming in those waters, forced me to find within myself something greater than just being a workaday person in the world, being real, just, going down to the grocery or to the shops and getting a head of fennel and bringing it home and putting it, because Shakespeare demands of us to understand that the stakes in any story are life and death. And if we sit down and think about what that really is, we're forced to live up to it. I began studying Shakespeare as a boy under the tutelage of my teacher, Bonda Lewis, who was a wonderful Shakespearean. And at the age of 12, she was explaining to me that if I worked on Shakespeare, I would learn how to be a better person. And now, all these years later, I am a better person, and I can see how much better I can be through the study of these works. So that's what playing Shakespeare has done for me.
Miguel Perez, welcome to Musing on the Bard.
Thank you. Sally McLean, very happy to be here.
That was wonderful. Oh, goodness. Yeah, that's beautiful. I have nothing further to follow up with that. That's such a great...
Okay, well then, that's it. Thank you so much.
We're done. We can go now. Yeah.
Let's go get a beer.
End of interview. That's perfect. Yeah. No, that's brilliant. What, gosh, I love that. Very evocative. Well,
Ah,
I will follow on from that just to
mhm.
start the process of our conversation.
Oh, yes.
What was it that motivated you to be an actor in the first place?
Well, I've given several answers to that question. In fact, one of my students asked me, "Well, so why did you want to be an actor?" And I was being all funny, and I said, "Well, I'm too lazy to work and too nervous to steal." You know? But obviously, there's more to it than that. I know that as a boy, when I first started getting involved in theater projects and whatnot, it was because the smartest and prettiest girls in school were there. I didn't have to work that hard to get to know them. I just had to show up to the drama club meetings and be willing to do whatever. And that was kind of wonderful. But
I am loving that. And yes, that's probably a motivator for both boys and girls, I suspect.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the really cool, interesting kids were there too, and that was always great. Somewhere along the line, it became more than just, getting laughs from my mates and having fun and going to parties and, getting applause. I somehow, without even knowing it, I somehow came to know that it was possible to put ideas in people's heads. It was possible to think something and then through gesture and voice and elocution and lighting to take that idea that you have in your head and have it magically come into the audience's head. And it was like telepathy, it was, and I thought, my God, that's magic. That's a magical thing. And it was when I began to feel the power of that I began to work at the profession much more seriously. I realized that it's a very, very powerful art form that can, change people's minds about things. It's an art form that can get you arrested in the wrong government, in the wrong society. And I find that to be a huge responsibility and just really exciting. So I guess I started off being an actor for fun and games, and I continue, 50 some odd years down the road for, life and death.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah. The realization that the act of creation can be dangerous is something that, particularly in live theatre, obviously, you can still experience. But even in screen now, with certain projects that are getting made, particularly things like satire and stuff can be very dangerous.
Oh, yeah.
Funny, but dangerous. And to a degree, certain drama series and drama and films and things have also tackled subjects that, we wouldn't maybe normally talk about necessarily, or if we did, it would be not into a great depth, but then a piece of art can actually start society's conversation.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So it's also the power to change minds, as you say. Yeah, it's a really fascinating vocation.
Yes.
I don't call it a career, I call it a vocation. I think we're all kind of called.
Yeah, vocation. I'm often guilty of calling it a profession, but which is the same thing. But it's certainly not just a job.
No, it's definitely not. No, the amount it comes on of an individual to commit fully to it and do it properly. Yeah, definitely not just sitting in a cubicle, that's for sure. Although, to be honest, I think that would cost me as well, just sitting in a cubicle. I'm not really built for that either. But
no.
I can play it. I don't know if I could be it. I have tried and not succeeded.
I've had a few brushes with the cubicle life. Obviously it didn't take.
No, right. Well, I mean, I think following on from that question and getting on to talking about Shakespeare, which I know has been a huge part of your world, and you talked about in the intro as well, from a very early age being a huge part of your world. And I also know that you teach
Yeah.
acting and Shakespeare and other such things. So this is a question that not everyone's getting asked, but it's something I'm interested to hear your take on, which is, what do you think is the sort of, I hesitate to use the word mistake, but because our audience is not all necessarily actors or creatives, I will use it in this context. But what's the biggest mistake people make when approaching Shakespeare, in your opinion, and what are the consequences of that? And what would be your best tip for avoiding that?
I thought about this. I think the number one mistake in the layman's approach to Shakespeare, or to anyone's approach to Shakespeare when they've never really encountered it before, is to think of Shakespeare as literature, is this holy literature that has to be adored and loved and touched only with white gloves. It's terrible literature. God, it's some of the most boring reading you'll ever do. It's spoken word. Shakespeare, if you want to avoid falling into the trap of thinking that Shakespeare is inscrutable and is just so hoity-toity, then you have to sit down with friends and instead of reading it silently, read it out loud, shout it. Because Shakespeare was only ever meant to be spoken in a really loud voice. and once folks sit around and read Shakespeare together aloud, it takes on the life it requires in order to be funny or scary or to be moving, certainly. So yeah, stop thinking of Shakespeare as something that's all, posh and it's not. It's sweaty and grimy. The jokes are dirty, and
Right.
There's murders. What you want some dirty jokes, some dirty Shakespeare jokes?
He litters the text with them. They're everywhere.
Yes.
I mean, goodness. That's why you need to speak it out loud, because then you suddenly...
Yes. That's when it starts to get good. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I 100% yes to that tip. I think there's the danger of the fact that many of us get introduced to Shakespeare in English class. And so that sets up everyone generally that maybe hasn't got an interest in performing or anything like that. Everyone immediately goes, oh gosh, Shakespeare, it's, as you say, it's really dry literature. It's dry. And when you're just reading it. And even when you get up in class to read it out loud, they very rarely say to you, hey, you've got, an hour or however long to go, prep that before you get up to read that out loud. So that's really confronting as well, because it's a foreign language to many people.
Oh, yeah. And that's interesting, because once you start to dip into it, and I'm sure you've noticed this many times, it's not all that foreign. No. There's a few words that maybe aren't around that much anymore, but the ideas under those words are pretty easy to divine.
And we do speak Shakespeare pretty much every day without realizing it.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's method to your madness and what you're saying here.
Exactly. So many phrases have come out of your plays.
Please, my God. Damn words. Assassination persisted until Shakespeare used it in the Scottish play.
Correct. Yes. And bedazzled.
Bedazzled.
I love that. Which, actually became a thing, which people did as an activity with craft,
Oh my God. That's right. Yeah. Bedazzling things.
And it's come from Shakespeare. So, but I think it is because he's on a plinth up there on that pedestal. And everybody kind of feels that if you're not being reverent, then you're not doing it the right way. And I think that's problematic. I knew we were on the same page with that, but it's good to have it on record, because I think the more people who keep saying that, hopefully the more teachers particularly will realize it's okay to play with that text.
Absolutely.
And there are some great teachers, by the way, great English teachers I know who will play with that text and get the kids to do stuff, but there need more of them.
Yes. A lot more of them who aren't afraid.
Right? Because it's not that scary. Well, it's not. It might feel initially, but it's not. Well, continuing on the Shakespeare vein then, what these are sort of a paired set of questions here, but we'll start with, in your background, your experience of working with Shakespeare. What would be your best experience performing Shakespeare, and what did it teach you?
Wow. I think the best experience performing Shakespeare was one moment, one single performance of The Taming of the Shrew in Miami Beach, Florida, not on the posh side of town with all the hotels and whatnot, but in the really gritty neighborhood called Overtown, where everybody is struggling. And our company was brought to the high school to play this play for them. And, here are these kids who, the poverty was crushing. The prospects for all of these young people were nil. And they all came to the school theater to see this play. And they were skeptical. But we just told this wonderful, bawdy story. Oh, you and I, we both know what a great story it is. And by the time we got to the taming scene, all the young girls in the audience, kids who'd never heard a word of Shakespeare spoken in their life, were screaming and cheering for every little thing that Kate had to say. And all the young boys were screaming and cheering for all the things that Petruchio had to say. And it became, the actress and I, her name's Sandra Proctor Gray, a wonderful actress. All of a sudden, we were caught up in the energy of the audience, and we laid it up for them, and so that they could have the most possible fun. And by the time we finished that scene, and the terms were set for what was going to happen, those young people were bought in, and they were listening. They were with it. They heard all the dirty jokes. They enjoyed all the situations. The boys were going nuts when Petruchio was starving poor Caterina and trying to break her will. And the young women went nuts when Caterina, the way we played it, her will wasn't broken at all. She had decided that the two of them could be something together. She had decided that. And those girls were just nuts. And when it was over, they wouldn't stop applauding. They wouldn't stop calling us back for another curtain call and another curtain call. These young children that was probably the only Shakespeare play they'd ever seen in their whole lives. And they ate it like eating life, running down their chins. It was that was a great moment. That was when I understood the power of Shakespeare. And in fact, those young people, they were the groundlings, and you can always count on the groundlings. They're the ones who really get it,
Absolutely. Absolutely. That would have been an extraordinary experience.
It was.
And, this is the thing, I think, is that we're back to that commentary on that we sort of touched on before about Shakespeare being treated as high literature, and therefore, for the rarefied air of the upper echelons of society. That's absolute bollocks, because he wrote for everyone, and particularly for the groundlings, as you point out.
Mm-hmm.
They were the ones that turned up in their numbers and provided the energy in the space for the actors as well to feed off back in the day.
Yeah.
So, that would have been very much an experience of what it would have been like to stand on, one of their stages.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Back in Elizabethan England.
That exchange of energy between the company and the audience, that's theater. That's what it's about,
Absolutely. Oh, that's brilliant. God, I love that. And I think it's interesting too, because there've been a lot of practitioners who've gone into places like prisons and underprivileged housing commission, like that in London, who have brought people in to play Shakespeare from those particular environments. And you get a very similar reaction. Initially, they're all, what the hell is this and why would I do that?
Yeah.
But then when they suddenly start to get into getting up and moving and speaking the words, there's a fire that becomes lit in all of them,
Yes.
which is fascinating. And I don't know. I mean, it might happen with a contemporary playwright of now, but definitely happens with Shakespeare. And as you say, that is his power, isn't it?
Yes.
It speaks to us no matter what our background, which is extraordinary.
Yeah. I mean, everywhere you go, everybody knows who Shakespeare is. Everybody knows these stories, some more than others, but there's a good reason for that.
There is, yeah. I mean, on the flip side then of that, what would you say has been your most difficult or challenging experience performing Shakespeare, and what did that teach you?
Wow. Well, actually, just recently, I accepted an invitation to perform in a benefit production of Romeo and Juliet. The rub was that it's not Romeo and Juliet, it's Romeo e Julieta. And it was a Spanish production of Romeo and Juliet, and not just any Spanish. It was translated by the great playwright, a poet, Pablo Neruda, who, this is just beautiful. And yes, I speak Spanish, but I speak Spanish like a 12-year-old boy. So several of my students were in the production, and they said, Miguel, come on, you want to improve your Spanish? Come and play with us. And I said, I want to, kids, but, come on. And they said, look, we're looking for somebody to play Montague. In the play, it was called Montesco. And I think, piece of cake, Montague. One little scene at the beginning, one in the middle, one at the end. No problem. So I had just done an audition in Spanish for this thing with Javier Bardem, and so I had this wonderful audition that I just sent it to the director, and he says, "Love the audition tape. Yes, I want to have you in the show, but I don't want you to play Montesco." I said, "Oh, what are you going to do? Samson, Gregory, what? I want you to do Friar Lawrence, Padre Lorenzo." I thought, oh no. He's all through the play, and he just goes on and on and on and on.
Yep.
And I said, send me the script. He says, well, it's not all in Spanish. I said, well, send me the script. And just these long walls of really eloquent, beautiful Spanish. And I thought, oh, shit, my students are in the show, what am I going to do? I said, okay, I'll do it. He took pity on me. He took some of the longer monologues. He didn't shorten them, but he put in some English and then some English. And I said, that last monologue in Act 5 where he just recaps the whole play, we don't need that in Spanish or English. We don't need it. He said, I really want to hear it. I really want it to be there. So I said, okay. Sally, I've never worked so hard on a text as I've worked on that text. There were so many things that were pressuring me to do well, not to just to do well, but to exceed myself. I mean, my students were counting on me, and I love my students. I never want to let them down. So there's that. I have been trying to improve my Spanish and get something back of my culture, and I didn't want to fall short of that. Pablo Neruda is one of the great poets of the last 2 centuries, and I felt obliged not only to speak the Spanish, but to speak it well. And I just love that play. And it was a benefit. It was important to do well for the Bilingual Arts Foundation. But I worked and worked and worked. And in the process of working, I just began to see things in the play that I'd never seen before. I had never seen Friar Lawrence's anger toward Capulet, because Capulet was the true force behind what these children ended up doing. When Friar Lawrence says, you would have married her perforce to the County Paris, and so she comes to me, and it's all Capulet, but I'd never seen it before, and maybe it's just me as an actor trying to find ways of rounding out the character, but my Padre Lorenzo. It came out. So I guess I had to go to a different language to be able to come to the play fresh and to come to the play on its own terms rather than bringing in all this stuff I've done before. And I played Samson and Gregory. I played Montague. I played the Noble County Paris. I've been begging somebody to hire me to play the nurse. Hasn't happened yet, but but because of the Spanish, I had to come to it with fresh eyes and learned more about the play because of that. What I knew before didn't really matter anymore. It was what I had to know now in order to do it. So that was a very informative experience, and taught me that next time I do a Shakespeare, the big job is to just let go of anything I thought was true about it and look at it now today and see what's true now today. And there's always something.
There's always something, you're correct. But that is such an interesting revelation to have had. And it's true though, I think particularly when you're seen by others to have expertise in the Shakespeare realm, I think it becomes this thing where you do have to just reset yourself almost to beginner in a way. I mean, all of those skills are still there and they're going to get used, but yeah, just come into it as if it's the first time every time.
Yeah.
And it can be easy not to.
Absolutely. It's easy just to fall. Oh, well, yeah, I know that. I don't have to think about that because I know that. Well, no, I found out that I still have to think about this play.
Which is the joy of it, because of the fact that there are so many layers to his work, and you can play these characters in so many different ways, and it's fascinating. And it's brilliant to be able to make a discovery like that, because then, of course, that challenges you in a different way as an actor as well to commit to that new attitude or approach, or point of view that character now has. That's which makes it fresh again for you too.
Oh, yeah. I'm not going to be doing any more performances in Spanish. I promise you. It was too nerve-wracking. My poor wife, she was like saying, "Are you going to be all right?" I'm fine. Oh my God.
Right. Yeah. Wow. I mean, kudos is all I have to say for actually having the bravery to just go, the courage to be terrified and do it anyway, because and I'm sure you did it beautifully, but I get you, because the language, as you know, even though we're talking about it being very close to modern English, the language is a thing, and another language even more a thing.
Language twice removed. I'm like, oh my God.
Right. But well done on getting through that. And I love that discovery. And that is true of the Friar. I mean, he's often played as being quite placid, quite passive in a way.
Oh, no.
And that anger. Wow. What a rich thing to play with.
Oh, and boy, those moments between myself and the actor who was playing, the actor who played Capulet, very passionate, very powerful guy. And all of a sudden we're having these moments. And he wanted to just smack me up, and he knew he couldn't do it because I had God on my side. And I wanted to smack him up, and I couldn't do it because I'm a holy man. But there was this vitriol between me and Capulet, and it was great. It really it took things in a really interesting direction.
That is so, so cool. I love it. See, I'm Shakespeare nerding out here at the minute. That is awesome. But I mean, I think this is the thing about well-known characters in his canon. We all kind of think, because it's a shortcut to a degree to get into the core of the character. We kind of go, oh, yeah, I know this character. And the challenge is to go, yeah, I do know this character, but what is there that I may not have noticed just yet? And I think also what would have helped you is speaking in a different language, as you said, because suddenly you're hearing it new because you haven't performed in that language before. So it's a bit like what we've done with Shakespeare Republic when we gender swap or we age swap or whatever. People suddenly hear the text differently because it's coming from space to what you'd normally expect. And it can happen for the actor too, where they're suddenly going, oh, I thought this about this character, but now that I'm playing it, there you go. Good advice to anyone who's delving into Shakespeare. Try it in a different language, or
in a different language.
Pick up a character that you may not normally be seen playing and see what happens.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, that's when I teach Shakespeare, I make a point of just handing out speeches. I don't care about gender. I don't care about age. Just work the material and see what you get from it. And sometimes beautiful discoveries take place.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you are doing what Miguel was suggesting earlier, listeners out there, around reading the plays out loud, don't necessarily have the youngest girl in the group play Juliet. If you're doing Romeo and Juliet, have her play the nurse or Capulet or Friar Lawrence. Play around with it, swap the genders, swap the ages, because that's something to play with as well. It is something that, opens new windows, I think, to the work. It's very cool. Well, moving on, again, more Shakespeare, but to the next thing, which is, and it kind of feeds back into what we just talked about, a slightly controversial question. Any attitudes about Shakespeare or approaches to his work that you disagree with? And if so, what is that attitude or approach, and what's your point of view on that issue based on your experience and knowledge?
Wow, that I disagree with. Well, okay, I'll tell you that I disagree entirely with this sort of museum approach to Shakespeare. I can't imagine ever being involved in a production of Shakespeare that features, Elizabethan neck ruffs and, beautiful brocaded capes and there's this high toned language, and it's like when you listen to the Royal Shakespeare Company records from the 1960s of, and bring forth Angelo, da, 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 my lord, da, da, da. And it's I don't like museum Shakespeare. I don't want to do museum Shakespeare, and which isn't to say that I'm all about deconstructing or rearranging Shakespeare. I don't think you have to do any of that. I think that just taking that beautiful language and giving it a human touch is much more. I don't know. It's just a better way of going with it. I don't need these expensive sets, and I don't need perfect lighting, and this is such a thing. But two planks and a passion. Just give me a place to play, put some light on me, and give me the language. I think we're seeing less and less of museum Shakespeare, but still it exists. There's a theater company here in town, which will remain nameless. There's one director in particular who just can't seem to let go of their, I don't know what you'd call it, their feeling of preciousness towards Willie.
Yeah.
And the productions are beautiful, the production values are nice, and it's just like so yeah, that I disagree with that entirely. I don't think there's any I think as much money is spent on that kind of work, I feel it's money that's wasted.
Yeah. I think, again, we're back to the thing about Shakespeare is a living thing, and it kind of his works kind of need to, and have been written in a way that can be performed in whatever style is du jour of the time. I mean, look, the stand and deliver stuff, which is what I call it, from the RSC in that period.
There it is.
Wow, and I get it. Look, again, that's pretty much came out of the Edwardian and earlier forms of theatre, as you know, which was all.
Oh yeah.
Any of the classics were very, very serious.
Oh yeah.
Very serious. But I think, I do understand that. But I think there is, as you say, there's a danger when someone puts a ruff around their neck, apart from anything else, as that then physically will restrict you anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Because it just will. And some of those costumes, women particularly, are going to be corseted like no one's business. So breathing is going to be an interesting trick. Mm-hmm. But also even just being any kind of, freedom of movement is going to be interesting. Same for the guys wearing, cod pieces and freaking tights.
Oh, cod pieces.
Yeah. And we don't wear those clothes today. The actors that were performing in those clothes back in the day, that was their daily clothing. They moved that fine because that's what they wore all the time.
Yeah.
But we don't.
No, and Shakespeare's never been about fashion.
No.
Never been. Every now and then you'll hear somebody talking about, that's the French for your French slop. Okay, so All right, so fine. We know something about the way that Romeo dressed. But
bottom line, though, if we were going to do, I think, if we were going to do Shakespeare authentically, inverted commas, as far as wardrobe and that sort of stuff goes, then your entire wardrobe needs to be from a thrift shop.
Yeah.
Because that's what their wardrobe was. They were getting second-hand clothing from the nobility.
Yeah.
Dressed their people, unless there was a specific special costume that had to be made. They were all clothes handed down from the aristocracy that they filled their wardrobes with to use on stage. So that case, we should be shopping for all our clothes in secondhand stores. If we're
absolutely, give me that. I'll take that.
Right. That means that we're not wearing Elizabethan gear unless we find a thrift shop that still specializes in that, which I don't think exists anymore. Yeah.
And we don't need to build sets when there are lines like, "Oh, this is Illyria, lady," or, "Oh, so this is the Forest of Arden." Are you certain that we've landed on the deserts of Bohemia?
Right.
There we go.
Yep, we're there. I mean, as you know, when we worked together on Shakespeare Republic and you did the chorus, that entire speech is about building the scene because it's not physically there.
Yeah. That was such a wonderful, wonderful thing, Shakespeare Republic. Kudos to you. My God. I mean, you took the moment that was engulfing the world and made art out of it. Bravo. Well, so happy to be a part of that.
Thank you. But that's a shared thing. I mean, with all of the ensemble, because you guys all rose to the occasion and went, sure, let's do this, as true creatives do. Let's make this thing happen. But that's a case in point. I mean, it's why when working on the various Shakespeare projects that I work on, they don't get set in the original historical period they were written because, well, I think it's a barrier to understanding to a degree. I think there's a visual cue that people can get as well. They suddenly see a rough and it's just this subconscious visual cue where they recoil because of the way we've been taught Shakespeare, unfortunately, in high school. And so unless you had a progressive teacher that showed you, a modern adaptation of one of the plays on film, you were probably exposed to early RSC.
A 3-disc vinyl record collection.
And so that can create a visual, it's a visual thing that makes you recoil from it because of that subconscious connection. So things like doing season 3, which was very much set in the pandemic and all the lockdowns, that meant that we did what Shakespeare intended, I think. That's my opinion when he wrote the pieces, was that he was speaking to his contemporaries and I think, to society in general at the time, and continues to do so because we reinvent the settings, because we reinvent those characters for a modern age or the current age. So, I agree with you on that one. We're sort of on that theme now. I mean, why do you think Shakespeare endures and continues to be performed so widely?
Well, there are characters in Shakespeare that we all know in our own lives. We all know the nurse in Romeo and Juliet. This loving, funny old lady who just never shuts up. But you keep her around because she's so sweet. We all know Iago, this guy who pretends to be your friend and was really just trying to undermine you. We all know Henry V, Henry Plantagenet, this young guy who's an idealist who wants to change the world and can for some reason. He's just one of those people that he's got charisma. Yeah, we know about these people. There's all of these people. Hamlet, Claudius, the ghost of Hamlet's father. There's not a human being in the world that isn't haunted by a ghost of a parent, a father, a mother, whatever. We all know that. So Shakespeare never goes out of fashion because being human is something that we can't stop being. And for whatever reason, he seemed to really understand what it is to be a human being, and wrote about that. Up until Shakespeare, you go to hear a play and you're hearing about kings and queens and gods and goddesses. It's like, And instead, the great scene between, Master Shallow and Falstaff and Henry IV Part 2, these two old guys, we've heard the chimes at midnight, Master Shallow. Oh, that we have, Sir John, that we. And it's like, I mean, who hasn't heard two old timers sitting there talking? And when it turns out that John Falstaff had no memory of this guy and was just humoring him, who hasn't seen that too? I mean, that's just what it is to be a human being. And if I were a better Shakespeare scholar, I could just quote back and forth, "Nom, nom, 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 nom." But if you go through if the folks out at home there, if you go through the canon, you'll find it. It's all there.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so much fun to continue to revisit these stories. And there's ripping good stories, with murder and sex and jealousy and love and desire and longing and more love and then some more death. And it's just great stuff.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. He was just really good at encapsulating what it was to be human, to put the human condition on the stage.
Oh, yeah.
And I've said this before, but I think because he started as an actor, that probably helped. He was used to putting himself in other people's shoes.
Yeah, yeah.
And also observing, like a master observer of what human beings were like.
Yeah.
If we could get access to the notebooks, if they existed, I'd be fascinated.
I'd love to see that. I would love to see the little things that he noticed that found their way into the stories, into the plays,
Well, I mean, a follow-on question actually to that, if you could ask Shakespeare a question, what would it be?
I guess I would say, how did you pick your company? How did you pick the company? Because I just can't believe that every single word was his. He had some really good players who would say, Will, that's good. This might work too. And it just feels like because so many of the same character keeps turning up, whoever played Iago probably, who knows, I can say this, but whoever played Iago probably played Paroles in All's Well That Ends Well. This guy who you think he's one thing, but he's really another. So these characters keep turning up in different names and different faces, but it's the same human being. And so how did you get your company? Who are these people? How do you work with them? How much is just came out of the work together, and how much did you put on paper?
Yeah, that to be a fly on the wall of a rehearsal in the Globe at the time would have been really interesting.
Can you imagine? Wow. Seeing these things, workshopped and put together. And I'm sure it wasn't anything like what we do in these beautiful theaters. Let's go. Come on. We go up in a week.
Right? Literally. Yeah. And here are your cue lines.
Here's your cue line. Yeah. Yeah. I think the mechanicals is probably a really good indication of what it must have been like to play with his company.
Right. Yeah. And that's actually what's lovely, I think, about his works is he leaves those kind of clues in those.
Yeah.
And also, as you know, as every actor knows, the speech in Hamlet, speak the speech, and I think that when people say Shakespeare has left nothing of himself in the texts, which I do hear occasionally, I'm like, oh, he left plenty. Sure. But he left his creative philosophies in the texts. That's what we're finding there is what he thought about the aspect of, theatre and acting and writing even. It's there in the text, definitely. So good question. That's a good question. Like that. I'd love to know that answer. That would be fascinating. I mean, speaking of philosophy of acting and the act of creating in general, what's your personal philosophy around that? And how, second part of that question is, how do you see the role of artists and creatives in society?
I guess fundamental to my philosophy in creating, making theater and making any kind of art really is that ideas, any idea is a jewel, and all you need to do is find the right way to place it. I mean, original, good, clean, wonderful ideas are pearls beyond price. So anyone who has an idea in my rehearsals is going to be heard, and the idea is going to be taken seriously, and we're going to see what we can do with that idea, and if we can't, we're going to see where that idea leads us, because sometimes the best ideas are the ones that lead us to a whole new realm that we never considered. So yeah, I'd say ideas are the stock and trade. It's the thing that is most important. What was the second part of the question?
Well, no, brilliant. So agree with that. And having obviously, I mean, we've been lucky enough to work together, not just on Shakespeare Republic, but also the show must go online and play opposite each other, for Taming of the Shrew. And any listeners out there, I can 100% verify that Miguel is speaking truth there, because we had great conversations and dived really deep into what is the relationship between Caterina and Petruchio, what's going on under the surface of this. And we both, were popping in ideas about maybe it's this, maybe it's that. And that is the joy of the work, I think, as well, is that alchemy that gets created.
And I remember the second half of the question. And this leads us to that. Yes, ideas, the jewels that we use to make these beautiful pieces of art. But that's also what that's also what repressive governments fear the most, is ideas, people with ideas. Quick story to illustrate this. Back in the 1980s, when the Soviets were cracking down on the Solidarity movement in Warsaw, in Poland, they instituted a crackdown. They said, okay, that's it. Nobody on the street after 6 p.m. Anyone on the street after 6 p.m. will be shot, and no, everybody stays home until dawn, and then you can go out and work and do whatever you want. Tanks on the street, armed soldiers on the street, kind of like here in LA.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what people did? They put blankets up over the windows of their flats. They moved the furniture in the living rooms of their flats. They lit candles, and they put on plays. They got out their scripts or whatever they had, and they put on plays for each other in the dark, hoping that they didn't get found out by the Russians, because they weren't going to be defeated. Their ideas were not going to be erased. And then when finally the crackdown was over, the movement wasn't. The soul of those people continued. And I would like to think that part of that soul was preserved by the preservation of art and artists, and the artists who preserved it. So yeah, art is very dangerous to oppressive regimes, and many artists have suffered and paid a great price for that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's funny, as being an actor and a director and and creative people.
Bon Vivant, Man About Town,
right? All of that, exactly. Multifaceted, but a creative. I mean, people tend to be a bit dismissive of actors having opinions, or creatives generally having an opinion, which I kind of find really odd, because I'm like, what do you think we're drawing on to create the people that you enjoy watching? Like, seriously, we have to have opinions. That's how it works,
Yeah.
Our characters have a point of view, and we need to actually also have a point of view, and we need to find how they meld. So sorry, it's going to be inherent, but there is I've had one person in the past on social media make comments about, well, it's not like it's brain surgery. And it's like, well, no, it's not. Okay, no one's saying we're operating on people's brains in that way. But we are creating the content that lets that brain surgeon go home and forget about their day if they've had a bad day. We are the ones that get to shine a light in dark corners. We are the ones that get to hold truth to power. And I say we as the collective, it can come in all forms. We were talking about before, it can come in satire, it can come in, comedy, it can come in drama.
Oh, yes, yes. Well, even in music, even in classical music, Shostakovich, several of his symphonies were direct shots at the Soviet government. And it was so obvious that, he got in trouble with Stalin over some of his compositions, and he said, no, I'm just trying to honor the revolution. And it was deniable, but boy, it was clear to anyone. And Picasso, when he painted Guernica.
Oh, yes.
That piece of art was so explosive that he couldn't keep it in his home country of Spain. He couldn't. It was too explosive, too subversive, and it lived in New York for decades before it finally went back to Madrid.
This is it, yeah. And photographers have taken her incredible shots of life that have been absolutely horrendous and galvanizing for the rest of the public. I mean, so I'm not, creatives, we have a responsibility. There is a responsibility that we have. I'm not saying we're better than anyone else. We're definitely not. We're all human. Everyone's job is important. It's what keeps society ticking over, that everyone does different jobs. But I think part of our job is doing all of that. And we don't have to be political every single time. But what I find interesting is that Shakespeare himself was quite political and clever about it because of the censors of the time as well. So Shakespeare can enter that conversation quite regularly, as we've seen.
Oh, yes. Well, my friends at the New York Shakespeare Festival at Shakespeare in the Park, I was there in 2016. I was invited to come back in 2018 and do Julius Caesar. I couldn't do it. I was doing a film or something. They did a Julius Caesar, and Caesar had a beautiful blonde hair and a blue suit and a red tie, and they stabbed him, and everybody knew what was going on. And the MAGA people, thank you so much, they tried to run up on stage and stop the show.
That's right.
And the cops, of course, stopped them. A couple of the guys on stage, a couple of all my friends, they were ready. They were ready to have a punch up with these guys who were getting up on the stage. They wanted that because, well, isn't that lovely? Isn't that wonderful? That's the whole thing right there. Shakespeare, we took Shakespeare with the politics of a would-be emperor trying to overthrow a republic with sheer charisma and guile, and the Republicans saying, no, we are a republic and you cannot continue. And then these MAGA types getting what the story is. Isn't that funny? They never saw Shakespeare in their life, but they knew what the hell was being said. They knew the story was being told, and they tried to stop it.
Right. The power of Shakespeare, right?
Yeah.
That incident, all of that was, I mean, we were reading about it in papers, in the news, and seeing it on the news here in Australia. So that reached across the globe, what was going on there. And that's an extraordinary example of exactly of the power of art.
And I was kicking myself for not being in that company.
Right.
We would have had some fun.
Oh my goodness. But yeah. So there's a responsibility, I think, too, when we're staging Shakespeare and staging anything really, but particularly Shakespeare, that's a really good example of taking Shakespeare and really looking at the current climate and going, and using it for, to make the point, to be the canary in the coal mine, to say, oi, this is a problem. Yeah. No, that's a really good example. Well, I want to do the quick fire round now.
Okay, quick fire round. Here we go. All right. So, favorite Shakespeare character?
The nurse from
Romeo and Juliet.
Favorite Shakespeare play?
Cymbeline.
Ooh, good one. Favorite Shakespeare performance you've seen?
Ooh, favorite Shakespeare performance I've seen? Mark Rylance as Hamlet.
Very good. Yes, very good. I agree. Favorite Shakespeare character you've played?
Favorite Shakespeare character I've played? I think it would have to be Petruchio, Taming of the Shrew. Love that guy.
He's great. I agree. And you play him very well. Excellent. Describe Shakespeare in 3 words.
Handbook for humanity.
Amazing. That's brilliant. Oh, that's brilliant. I love it. Awesome. That's awesome.
You've been asking really wonderful and deep questions. Well, okay, let me preface this. I've been at this for a long time, and I've noticed that the players that I get the most joy out of working with, no matter what it is, a television show, a radio thing, I don't care. The players that I get the most enjoyment out of working with almost always have a background in Shakespeare. So I would ask you, as a Shakespearean, as a teacher, as a producer of Shakespeare, somebody who's had to, assess the skills of different players for the things that you're doing. Do you think that Shakespeare, working on Shakespeare, makes common players into good players? Or is it just that the really good players are drawn to Shakespeare?
Oh, good question. Okay. Well, let me have a think about that. Well, it's interesting because my background is that I hated Shakespeare when I first started.
Yeah.
And that's because I'm dyslexic. So being handed a text at age 13 of Romeo and Juliet and asked to read it right there and then out loud to the class, not great.
Yeah, that's challenging.
Humiliating, actually, because I stumbled. I couldn't make head nor tail of it. So that was horrendous and humiliating. And at age 13, I said I will never do Shakespeare because of that experience. And I stuck to that right the way through high school. And then I was going to audition for drama school in London. And, of course, I had to learn a Shakespeare piece, didn't I?
Of course, yeah.
Now, my drama teacher, bless her, had all the way through high school had been trying to encourage me back to Shakespeare because she realised what had happened, but I was not having any of it. But then, of course, I had to learn this piece. So we actually chose Queen Catherine from Henry VIII.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Oh, that's a wonderful speech.
Which was chosen because it wasn't a common speech for a young 20-something as well. Yeah. We kind of went for something that people, no Juliets, no, Helenas, none of that. We're going to go for Catherine. That was probably the first little chink in that decision around no Shakespeare, because I sort of went, I kind of get this woman. Like, I'm understanding what's going on for her. I mean, anyone who's been rejected by somebody that they thought they were spending the rest of their life with is in such a humiliating public way. Even just being told, sorry, it's over. Like the shock of that, I think most of us can relate who've been there. So anyway, that was the first thing. And then obviously got into drama school, which was great. And then luckily had a really good Shakespeare teacher. Who basically demystified the whole thing, was also handed a thesis. We had to pull out of a hat the what we were going to write our thesis on the history of acting. So all the various eras were all thrown into a hat, Greek, whatever, right the way through, Restoration, right the way through. And I pull out Elizabethan theatre and went, you've got to be joking, because I was still not convinced about the Shakespeare.
Right.
But I'm training in London. And as my Shakespeare teacher said to me, well, you're living where he lived and worked. So just go walk his footsteps.
Yeah.
Go see what he would have seen. There's still buildings standing. And at that point, the Globe was being rebuilt as well. So I got to sit there and actually watch them rebuilding it, hand thatching the roof, hand turning all the balustrades. Like, that was extraordinary to watch how much detailed recreation of the original stuff was going on.
Amazing. The place is so wonderful.
Right. And so it felt that was a real insight into Elizabethan era as well, watching people actually, craftsmen actually crafting this stuff as they would have back then. Anyway, long story short, that's still a very long explanation, but I got to the point where I don't know how, I don't know what happened. I don't know, something clicked and I became a born-again Shakespearean, as I like to call it. Now, so to answer your question, it's a very long way to give all that preface, but to answer your question, I think the unlocking of the Shakespeare interest and the sudden curiosity that then kicked in around the characters and then the desire to fully understand them better, from my experience, which is probably the strongest thing I can speak from, I think that made me a better actor. I think it made me a better collaborator to a degree as well, because with Shakespeare you have to collaborate to a degree because everyone's got a different take on what's going on. So you kind of have to be able to have that conversation, so you kind of know where everyone's coming from and working out what is this play about and putting it into the modern context. I think it helped my confidence, and I think that's important. Because a big part of the acting thing is, even though most of us are quite shy, most of us are quite, extroverted introverts generally, and we always question. I find the most talented actors generally question, do I even know what I'm doing half the time? We kind of do, but you've still got to have that confidence to try.
Right.
So I think that is probably from my personal experience, I think I became a better actor because I finally understood, or at least started coming to grips with Shakespeare. But working with other actors, I don't know, it's a bit chicken and egg, this question, because I've worked with other actors that have been, like yourself included actually, who've been introduced to Shakespeare at quite a young age, have really enjoyed it all the way through, and are brilliant to work with. And are brilliant actors. So is that because of Shakespeare? Maybe. I think what it is that there's a natural, we all know that acting can be taught, but there is a spark that can't be within those actors that really fly. And I think, and when I say that, I mean actors that are brave, that just jump in, that take the risks, and you and I have worked with plenty of people like that. And I think hello, you just did Romeo and Juliet in Spanish. So you also fall into that category. There is this spark that exists in people. And I think that also, if they're not already into the Shakespeare thing, I think that would probably draw them in that direction because it's a challenge.
Yeah.
And I think the challenge, I think that's what it is. I think it's the bravery, the courage, the thing, okay, I'm just going to do it. When I made my phone calls for the first season of Shakespeare Republic, and that's going back, 10 years ago. So I rang friends that were just my only, and it's all the way through the process, actually. People don't have to be Shakespearean to work with me on Shakespeare. In fact, sometimes it's better if they're not, to be honest. But if someone's also really experienced and a good human, such as yourself, they're absolutely in. But I don't have a problem if people don't have a Shakespeare background. And that was sort of a mixed bag, that first group of 6 actors. Some people had an enormous love of Shakespeare. Others had some interaction with Shakespeare, not really sure. And others were completely new to it. And the thing in common was they all immediately said, I'm in. And the ones that didn't know Shakespeare said, I'm terrified, but I'm in.
There you go. That's the spirit.
I think maybe having said all that, God, that's me working it out in real time. But I think having said all of that, I think there is an intrinsic spark in those people that you've worked with that is heightened once they come into contact with Shakespeare.
So that Shakespeare has a way of fanning that spark into a flame.
Yeah. And I think it can happen at any age. I think, as you talked about, you were really brought into it at 12. I was brought into it in my mid-20s. But that spark is what kind of, calls to that, I think. And then, as you say, it just fans it into this flame, because as we've talked about, there's so much depth in his work.
Yeah.
And so many characters and so many scenes and settings and things to say. And so that becomes exciting because it's this incredibly deep canon of work that, and there are people that then go even further and start to do performing the sonnets and, oh my God, so much stuff, the poetry. I mean, my first piece for Shakespeare Republic was Shall I Compare Thee to a Summer's Day?
Oh, thou art more lovely and more temperate.
Right. And I did it as a eulogy.
Oh, yeah, I could see that. Oh, as long as men can breathe and eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. Well, that's a great eulogy.
It is a great eulogy, and I've got a firm belief that he wrote it as a eulogy to start with, just because, why not? I'm going to be opinionated.
Oh, yeah. Why not?
I don't know. I would ask him that. Actually, that's something I'd probably ask him.
Yeah, that'd be a good question.
But it is actually also used, obviously, as a love poem, because it is that kind of thing that can be used for both. And but yeah, I did it as a eulogy, scattering ashes off a cliff top.
That's beautiful.
And
I'm going to steal that. I'm going to do that.
I got really moved doing that, even though it's all like not real ashes and all the rest, but it's the language. Again, I think the more you dive into that language, the more this is going to sound so wanky. Anyway, but the more you dive into the language, I think the more you dive into yourself, because you're diving more into the human condition.
Yeah, I'll buy that. And
I think that is what keeps enhancing you as an actor, like bringing more to the table as an actor, because if you're truly getting into it, I think it opens doors within yourself that maybe other things haven't until that point.
Right.
There you go. That's my very long answer to your question. Well, my friend, that brings us to the end of the chat. So I'm
just getting started here. Come on, Sal.
Getting going. But I'm going to ask you, do you have anything coming up you can talk about? And if so, what is it?
I just finished doing something for Amazon. I do a lot of voice dubbing, so we just dubbed a new film for Amazon called All the Names of God, and it's a film that came out of Madrid, Spain. We dubbed it into English beautifully. I dubbed the lead, and it was just great. So there's that. Mm-hmm. I just finished a very important meeting about a production of a David Harrower play called Blackbird that we're going to be doing at the beginning of next year. And that's a very, very challenging piece of theater. It's about the effects of pedophilia, both on the victim and the perpetrator.
Oh, wow.
So that's very challenging, very deep, and very frightening. But what the heck, if it's not frightening, what's the point?
Harking back to my point before about people doing Shakespeare and
also I may be doing a production at the Art of Acting studio where I work. They want to do a faculty production. I've been asked to consider doing juror number 3 from 12 Angry Men, the most angry of the 12 Angry Men. So those are all good things coming up on the horizon. I'm not dead yet, Sally.
Oh gosh, no. Absolutely not.
And I know that if anyone ever asks me to come down to Melbourne to teach a master class, my default answer would be yes.
So, okay, we're putting it out there, guys, because we would like to get Miguel down here to teach a master class. So let's just put it out there.
Let's put it out there and see what happens.
Right? Talk to me and we'll get it organized.
Plus, I just want to meet you in person. We've never met in person, Sal.
Right? Isn't that mad? We've played opposite each other and we've never actually met.
Met. I was with Dominic Brewer. We were talking about you in a pub in London, and we called you up or left you a message of some kind.
I loved that video you guys sent me. That was amazing. That was actually amazing. I was incredibly chuffed. That was so cool. Yes, thank you. I mean, this is the thing, isn't it? There's a lovely fraternity that gets created amongst actors and people, particularly when, and I was saying this before, I had a chat with Danielle Farrow as well, and for this, and there's a bond that gets formed, I think, when you're also in something like that, that's such global implications, and you're creating art. There's something about that bond that gets it happens anyway, but I think it's a very intense bond we've all formed as a result. So
here.
We'll organize it, Miguel. We'll get you over here. All right. We'll make it.
All right. We'll do that. That'll be fun.
We have to. Now, the last thing I want to ask you is where can people find out more about you online?
Well, I have a website, MiguelPerezActor.com.
Excellent.
And I'm also on Instagram, Miguel Pro Actor on Instagram. I think I'm also on Facebook. It's the same thing, Miguel Pro Actor. So you can find me. If you're really an aficionado, you can find me on IMDb, and you can see all the things I've done and all the handsome pictures of me. Soon to be on a wonderful podcast hosted by this amazingly glamorous actress named Sally McLean.
Oh my goodness. That's so going in the trailer. Oh my God. Thank you. That's amazing.
Thank you, darling.
Well, that is it. So conclude our merry chat. But thank you
lovely.
so much, Miguel. It's been so fabulous having you here on Musing on the Bard. And yes, let's get Miguel to Melbourne. Let's make it happen. Thank you for joining me for today's episode. I've been your host, Sally McLean, and this has been Musing on the Bard. You can read more about our work, all our guests, and this podcast at our official website, musingonthebard.com. If you want to see the video version of this podcast, head to our Patreon. Links are on the site. This podcast was made possible via a small events grant from the British Shakespeare Association. Produced by Incognita Enterprises, edited and presented by Sally McLean. With thanks to all of our guests and our Patreon patrons for continuing to support our work. Until next time, I wish you health, wealth, and happiness. See you anon.